The desert wind howled like a wounded animal as Bethany Green clutched her swollen belly and stumbled forward along the dusty trail. Her water canteen swung empty at her side, a cruel reminder of how unprepared she was for this journey across the Arizona Territory in the spring of 1883. 3 days since the stagecoach had left her behind after bandits attacked, killing the driver and the other passengers. 3 days of walking, hiding, and praying that her unborn child would forgive her foolishness. Bethany's vision blurred as the setting sun cast long shadows across the barren landscape. The mountains surrounding Bisbee were still at least a day's journey away, and she knew with sinking certainty that she wouldn't make it through another night alone. Her lips were cracked from dehydration, her once fine traveling dress torn and filthy. 6 months pregnant and completely alone, she had escaped one nightmare in Boston only to find herself trapped in another. "Just a little further," she whispered to her unborn child, her hand protectively covering the swell of her belly. "We'll find help soon." But as darkness descended and the temperature plummeted, Bethany's steps faltered. In the distance, a pinprick of light caught her attention, a campfire. Hope and fear warred within her. Who might be waiting by that fire? Bandits, miners, Indians. In her desperate state, she had little choice but to take the risk. As she drew closer, she could make out the silhouette of a single man tending the flames. A horse nickered softly nearby. The man's broad shoulders were wrapped in a worn duster, a cowboy hat pulled low over his face. Bethany's foot caught on a rock, sending her stumbling forward with a cry of pain. The man's head snapped up, his hand instantly moving to the revolver at his hip. "Who's there?" His voice was deep and wary, cutting through the night. Bethany froze, one hand still cradling her belly. "Please," she called out, her voice breaking. "I mean no harm. I'm alone and with child. I need help." The man rose to his feet in one fluid motion, his tall frame imposing even at a distance. He took a few cautious steps toward her, his face gradually becoming visible in the firelight. Rugged features, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and eyes that seemed to pierce right through her. "Madam," he said, his tone softening slightly as he took in her condition, "you shouldn't be out here alone." A humorless laugh escaped her parched lips. "That much I know, sir." She swayed on her feet, exhaustion finally claiming its toll. The last thing Bethany remembered was the cowboy moving with surprising speed as the world tilted beneath her feet. When Bethany awoke, she was lying beside the campfire, a saddle blanket tucked around her, and a folded duster serving as a pillow beneath her head. She blinked, disoriented, until the events of the previous night came rushing back. With a gasp, her hands flew to her stomach. "Your baby's fine, madam," came that same deep voice. "At least, seems that way to my untrained eye." The cowboy sat on the opposite side of the fire, a tin cup in his weathered hands. Dawn was just breaking, painting the desert in soft pinks and golds. "Water," he said, nodding toward a canteen by her side. "Drink it slow, been boiled and cooled." Bethany reached for it with trembling hands and took a careful sip. The water was the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. "Thank you," she managed, studying her rescuer in the morning light. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30 or so. His features were handsome in a rugged way, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. "I'm Bethany Green, Nathan Adler," he replied with a slight nod. "Most folks call me Nate. Mr. Adler, I don't know how to thank you. I thought I might." She couldn't finish the sentence. "No need for thanks. Couldn't leave a lady in your condition out here." His gaze flickered to her belly before returning to her face. "Where you headed, Mrs. Green? Your husband must be worried sick." Bethany's fingers twisted in the blanket. "I'm not. That is to say, there is no Mr. Green." "Not anymore." She swallowed hard. I was on the stagecoach to Bisbee when bandits attacked. I hid while they killed everyone else. I've been walking for 3 days. Nathan's expression darkened. The Clayton gang, most likely. They've been terrorizing this route for months. He set down his cup. Bisbee's still a good day's ride from here. I have a sister there, Bethany explained. Barbara. She married a miner and wrote that I could stay with them until. Her hand moved protectively over her belly. Nathan stood and walked to his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion who nickered softly as he approached. We'll head out once you've eaten something. You're in no condition to walk, so you'll ride Rusty here. I couldn't possibly impose. It's not an imposition, Mrs. Green. I was headed that direction anyhow. His tone made it clear the matter was settled. As Nathan prepared a simple breakfast of bacon and beans, Bethany observed him surreptitiously. He moved with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to the harsh realities of life in the territories. His clothes were trail-worn but clean, his gear well-maintained. "You're not from around here," he commented as he handed her a tin plate. It wasn't a question. Bethany accepted the food gratefully. "Boston. I was a teacher there, long way from home." "Home stopped being home when my husband died," she said softly. "And then when I discovered I was with child, his family made it clear I wasn't welcome. They suggested I give the baby up, marry again quickly." The bitterness in her voice surprised even herself. "I refused." Nathan nodded, respecting her privacy by not pushing for more details. Instead, he said, "Bisbee's a rough mining town, Mrs. Green, not like Boston. I'm aware. But Barbara wrote that they need teachers, and I need a fresh start." Bethany met his eyes directly. "I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Adler." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I believe you are at that." After breakfast, Nathan efficiently broke camp while Bethany cleaned her face and hands with a damp cloth he provided. When it came time to mount the horse, Nathan approached her cautiously. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her waist. Bethany nodded, her cheeks warming despite their dire circumstances. With gentle hands, Nathan lifted her onto Rusty's back, adjusting the stirrups to accommodate her condition. Their eyes met briefly during the exchange, and something unspoken passed between them. Nathan led the horse on foot, setting a careful pace that wouldn't jar Bethany's delicate condition. As they traveled, the terrain gradually changed, the flat desert giving way to rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and cacti. The April sun beat down mercilessly, but Nathan ensured they stopped frequently in whatever shade they could find. "Have you been in Arizona Territory long, Mr. Adler?" Bethany asked during one such rest. Nathan passed her the canteen before answering. "About 10 years, came west after the war. You fought in the war between the states." A shadow crossed his face. "Joined up in '64, just turned 16. Saw things no boy should see." He shrugged. "After Appomattox, couldn't go back to Pennsylvania. Too many ghosts." Bethany studied him with newfound understanding. "So you came west to escape them." "Something like that." He glanced up at the sky. "Time we moved on if we want to reach Bisbee by nightfall." As the day wore on, Bethany found herself growing increasingly aware of Nathan's presence, the broad set of his shoulders, the quiet strength in his movements, the occasional gentle looks he cast her way to ensure she was comfortable. Despite her situation, she felt safe in his company. By late afternoon, Bethany was fighting exhaustion, one hand braced against the saddle horn while the other supported her belly. Nathan noticed her discomfort immediately. "There's a creek just over that rise," he said, pointing ahead. "We'll rest there a while before the final stretch." The creek was a blessed relief, a ribbon of clear water cutting through the arid landscape. Nathan helped Bethany dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary before he stepped away. "Thank you," she murmured, acutely aware of the brief contact. While Rusty drank his fill, Nathan spread his duster on the ground beneath a scrubby mesquite tree. "Rest here. I'll fill the canteens." Bethany sank down gratefully, leaning back against the tree trunk. She watched as Nathan knelt by the creek, his movements efficient and purposeful. For the first time since the stagecoach attack, she allowed herself to truly relax. That proved to be a mistake. The sound came suddenly, a rattling hiss that froze her blood. Not 10 feet away, a rattlesnake lay coiled, its warning clear. "Nathan," she whispered, fear constricting her throat. He turned, saw the danger instantly, and moved with lightning speed. In one fluid motion, he drew his revolver and fired. The shot echoed through the quiet landscape as the snake's head exploded. Bethany's hands were trembling as Nathan rushed to her side. "Are you all right? Did it strike you?" "No," she managed, her voice shaky. "You saved me. Again." Relief washed over his features. Without thinking, Bethany reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gratefully. Nathan's eyes widened slightly at the contact, but he didn't pull away. "You'd best be careful with gestures like that, Mrs. Green," he said, his voice rough. "A man could get the wrong idea." Bethany released his hand immediately, her cheeks flaming. "Forgive me. I didn't mean to. No need for apologies." He stood, breaking the moment. "We should move on. Still got a ways to go before Bisbee." The tension between them lingered as they continued their journey, though neither mentioned the incident again. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, the landscape changed once more, the hills growing steeper as they approached the mountains where Bisbee was nestled. "There it is," Nathan said finally, pointing to a collection of buildings sprawled across a canyon ahead. Bisbee. Even from a distance, Bethany could see that it was nothing like Boston. The town appeared to cling precariously to the mountainside, with wooden buildings crowded together and the massive Copper Queen mine dominating the scene. Smoke rose from numerous smelters, giving the air a permanently hazy quality. "It's smaller than I expected," she admitted. "But growing fast," Nathan replied. "Copper's bringing in people from all over." As they approached the outskirts of town, Bethany felt a curious mix of relief and regret. Her ordeal was nearly over, but that meant parting ways with the quiet cowboy who had saved her life. "Where does your sister live?" Nathan asked as they entered the main street, navigating around wagons, miners, and the occasional prostitute soliciting from doorways. "Brewery Gulch," she wrote. "Her husband works at the Copper Queen." Nathan's expression tightened. "That's the rowdiest part of town. Saloons and other establishments." "I'm sure their home is respectable," Bethany defended, though uncertainty crept into her voice. She hadn't seen Barbara in nearly 5 years, not since she'd run off with Edward Gibson, the miner who'd promised her adventure and riches in the Arizona Territory. They made their way through the bustling streets, Bethany drawing curious glances from passers-by. A pregnant woman riding a horse led by a dusty cowboy was evidently not a common sight, even in Bisbee. Brewery Gulch lived up to its reputation. As dusk fell, the narrow street came alive with raucous laughter, piano music spilling from saloons, and miners fresh off shift spending their pay. Nathan kept close to Rusty's side, his hand never far from his revolver. "Which house?" he asked, his tone tense. Bethany scanned the ramshackle dwellings that lined the gulch between the saloons and brothels. "Number 17, she wrote. "It should have blue shutters." They moved slowly down the street, counting houses. When they reached number 17, Bethany's heart sank. The small cabin had no blue shutters, in fact. It appeared abandoned, with broken windows and a door hanging off its hinges. "This can't be right," she whispered. Nathan helped her dismount and approached the house cautiously. "Wait here." He disappeared inside for a few moments before returning, his expression grim. "No one's lived here for some time." Panic rose in Bethany's chest. "But this is the address she gave me." Perhaps they moved to a better part of town. The mine must be paying well by now. A woman emerged from the saloon next door, her painted face and low-cut dress making her profession obvious. She eyed them curiously before approaching. "You folks looking for someone?" she asked, her voice raspy from tobacco. "The Gibsons," Bethany said quickly. "Barbara and Edward Gibson. They lived here." Recognition flickered in the woman's heavily lined eyes. "Oh, honey, you're about 8 months too late. Edward Gibson got crushed in a cave-in last summer. Real tragedy." Bethany's hand flew to her mouth. "And Barbara, my sister," the woman's expression softened slightly. "Took it hard, she did. Tried working at the Golden Eagle for a spell," she nodded toward one of the saloons, "but wasn't cut out for it. Last I heard, she caught the stage to Tucson with some drummer who promised her a fresh start." The world seemed to tilt beneath Bethany's feet. Her sister was gone. Her last hope vanished. "Thank you for the information," Nathan said to the woman, placing a steadying hand on Bethany's elbow. "You're her kin, ain't you?" the woman asked, studying Bethany's face. "Got the same eyes." Bethany nodded mutely. "Well, wish I had better news for you. Good luck with the little one." With that, she returned to the saloon, leaving Bethany and Nathan alone on the darkening street. "I don't understand," Bethany said, her voice hollow. "Her last letter was dated just 3 months ago." "People come and go quickly in mining towns," Nathan said gently. "Especially widows." Reality crashed down around her like a physical weight. She was alone in a strange town, pregnant, with no money and no prospects. The baby kicked vigorously, as if sensing her distress. "I should have known," she whispered. "Barbara was always chasing the next adventure. I was a fool to think she'd settled down." Nathan watched her closely, concern evident in his gray eyes. "Let's find you somewhere to stay for the night. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." "I have no money," Bethany admitted, shame coloring her cheeks. "I spent everything I had on the stagecoach ticket." For a long moment, Nathan was silent, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. "I know a respectable boarding house on the edge of town. The owner, Mrs. Martinez, is a good woman. She might take you in, maybe let you work for your keep until the baby comes." Hope flickered faintly in Bethany's chest. "You think she would? Won't know till we ask." He adjusted his hat. "Come on, we'll try there." They left Brewery Gulch behind, much to Bethany's relief, and made their way to a quieter part of town. The boarding house was a 2-story wooden structure, well-maintained with actual glass windows, a sign of prosperity in Bisbee. A small sign reading "Martinez Boarding House" hung beside the door. Nathan helped Bethany dismount once more, this time keeping his hands firmly at her waist until he was certain she was steady. "Let me do the talking," he murmured as they approached the door. An older Mexican woman with silver-streaked black hair answered his knock. Her sharp eyes took in the odd pair on her doorstep, the trail-worn cowboy and the visibly pregnant young woman in a tattered dress. "Mrs. Martinez," Nathan greeted her, removing his hat. "Name's Nathan Adler. We met when I brought that package from your son in Tombstone last year." Recognition dawned in her eyes. "She, the courier, I remember you." Her gaze shifted to Bethany. "And who is this?" "This is Mrs. Bethany Green. She's in need of lodging and perhaps employment if you're willing." Mrs. Martinez's eyes narrowed as she noted Bethany's condition and lack of a wedding ring. "I run a respectable establishment, Mr. Adler." "And Mrs. Green is a respectable woman," Nathan countered firmly. "She was a teacher in Boston, widowed, and came west to join her sister." Unfortunately, her sister has left town. Bethany stepped forward. I understand your concerns, Mrs. Martinez. I assure you I'm not looking for charity. I'm willing to work for my keep cooking, cleaning, whatever is needed. I just need a safe place until my child is born. The older woman's expression softened slightly. A teacher, you say? Yes, madam, for 5 years. Mrs. Martinez considered this. There's a small room available, nothing fancy but clean. As for work, she glanced at Bethany's belly. You can help with meals and light housekeeping until your time comes. After that, we'll see. Relief washed over Bethany. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. You're very kind. Don't thank me yet. The work is hard and I don't tolerate laziness. She stepped back, opening the door wider. Come in, then. You look dead on your feet. As Bethany moved to enter, she turned back to Nathan, who remained on the porch, hat in hand. I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Adler. You saved my life out there. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said softly. They wouldn't have. An awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Nathan cleared his throat. I should be on my way, got business to attend to. Of course. Bethany tried to hide her disappointment. Will you? That is, are you staying in Bisbee long? A few days, perhaps. Got some supplies to pick up. Mrs. Martinez watched this exchange with interest before interjecting. Mr. Adler, you're welcome to take supper here this evening. Consider it payment for bringing me a much-needed helper. Nathan hesitated, his eyes meeting Bethany's briefly. That's mighty kind of you, madam, I accept. Good, stable your horse around back and wash up. We eat at 7. With that, she ushered Bethany inside, leaving Nathan on the porch with an expression that suggested he wasn't entirely sure how he'd ended up agreeing to dinner. The interior of the boarding house was simple but immaculately clean. Mrs. Martinez led Bethany upstairs to a small room at the end of the hall. It contained little more than a narrow bed, a washstand, and a battered chest of drawers, but after days on the trail, it looked like paradise to Bethany. Bathrooms at the end of the hall, Mrs. Martinez explained. Hot water is available on Saturdays for bathing. Other days you make do with the basin. It's perfect, Bethany assured her. Thank you. The older woman's stern expression softened slightly. Rest now. I'll call you when supper is ready. There are some clothes in the chest that might fit you left by a previous boarder. Nothing fancy, but clean. Left alone, Bethany sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. Just yesterday, she had been certain she would die in the desert. Now, she had shelter, the promise of work, and her thoughts turned to Nathan. Their acquaintance was barely a day old, yet she felt connected to him in a way she couldn't explain. After washing up and changing into a simple calico dress from the chest altered hastily with a few strategic safety pins to accommodate her pregnant form, Bethany made her way downstairs. The dining room was already occupied by several boarders. 2 older men who appeared to be minors, a middle-aged couple who owned the mercantile down the street, and a young woman who worked as a seamstress. Mrs. Martinez made brief introductions before directing Bethany to an empty chair. Nathan had not yet arrived, and Bethany found herself watching the door, anticipation building in her chest. When he finally entered, she barely recognized him. He had bathed and shaved, his dark hair still damp at the temples. His trail clothes had been replaced with a clean white shirt and dark trousers. Without the dust of the trail, he looked younger, his gray eyes more striking against his sun-darkened skin. Their eyes met across the room, and Bethany felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Nathan tipped his head in greeting before taking the empty seat beside her. "You clean up well, Mr. Adler," she murmured as Mrs. Martinez began serving a hearty stew. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. As do you, Mrs. Green. The meal was simple but delicious, and Bethany realized how famished she was. The conversation flowed around them, with the other boarders curious about the newcomers. Bethany carefully explained her situation, or the version Nathan had provided to Mrs. Martinez, while Nathan remained mostly silent, offering only that he worked as a courier and occasional ranch hand. After the meal, the boarders dispersed to their rooms or to the small parlor for cards. Nathan lingered at the table as Bethany insisted on helping Mrs. Martinez clear the dishes. "You don't start work until tomorrow," the older woman protested, though she allowed Bethany to carry a stack of plates to the kitchen. When Bethany returned to the dining room, she found Nathan standing by the window, his profile outlined by the last light of day. Something about his solitary figure tugged at her heart. "Thank you for staying for supper," she said, approaching him. He turned, his expression unreadable. The company was worth it. The simple statement sent warmth spreading through Bethany's chest. "Where will you go after Bisbee?" Nathan shrugged. "Wherever there's work, that's the cowboy life. It sounds lonely. It can be." His eyes met hers directly. "But it's a life I chose." Bethany found herself wanting to know more about this quiet man who had saved her life. "Have you always been a cowboy, more or less?" "Worked cattle drives, did some scouting for the army, tried my hand at mining for a spell." He leaned against the window frame. "Never stayed in one place too long. Never wanted to settle down." A shadow crossed his features. "Once, long time ago, before Bethany could inquire further, Mrs. Martinez returned from the kitchen. "You two should move to the parlor if you wish to continue your conversation. I need to set the table for breakfast." They relocated to the small parlor, where the other boarders were engaged in a spirited game of cards. Nathan and Bethany found seats in a quiet corner, away from the others. "What about you, Mrs. Green?" Nathan asked after they were settled. "How does a Boston teacher end up crossing Arizona territory alone?" Bethany's hands instinctively cradled her belly. "It's not a very interesting story." "I doubt that," she sighed, deciding he deserved the truth after all he'd done for her. "I married young 19. Thomas was from a good family, well respected in Boston society. I thought I loved him." "And did you?" "I loved the idea of him," she admitted. "The reality was different. He wasn't cruel, just distant, more interested in his business ventures and social standing than in building a true partnership." She paused, memories washing over her. "When typhoid swept through Boston last year, he was one of its victims. It happened so quickly." Nathan's expression was sympathetic. "I'm sorry. The strange thing is I mourned him, but I also felt free somehow. And then I discovered I was with child." Her voice lowered. "His family was horrified. They wanted to send me away until the baby was born, then have it adopted by suitable parents. When I refused, they cut me off completely. So you came west." Barbara's letters made Bisbee sound like a place where a person could start fresh, where the past didn't matter so much. She gave a rueful smile. "I was naive." "Not naive," Nathan countered. "Brave." The simple words, spoken with such conviction, brought unexpected tears to Bethany's eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "And now," he asked softly, "what will you do? Make the best of it, I suppose. Work for Mrs. Martinez until the baby comes. Perhaps the school will need a teacher by then." She met his gaze steadily. "I've come too far to turn back now." Something like admiration flickered in Nathan's eyes. "You're a remarkable woman, Bethany Green." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the evening chill. The moment was interrupted by a loud cheer from the card players, as one of the minors apparently won a significant hand. Nathan straightened in his chair, the spell broken. "It's getting late," he said, standing. You need your rest after the day you've had. Disappointment flooded through Bethany, though she knew he was right. Will I see you again before you leave town? Nathan hesitated. I'll be around for a few days at least. It wasn't quite a promise, but it was enough to lift her spirits. Good night then, Mr. Adler. Good night, Mrs. Green. He paused at the parlor door. And it's Nathan. Mr. Adler was my father. With that, he was gone, leaving Bethany with a curious mixture of hope and uncertainty swirling in her chest. The next few days fell into a routine. Bethany rose early to help Mrs. Martinez prepare breakfast for the boarders, then spent the morning cleaning rooms and doing laundry. Despite her condition, she insisted on carrying her weight, though Mrs. Martinez often shooed her to a chair when she looked tired. The baby comes first, the older woman would say gruffly, though her eyes held genuine concern. No need to work yourself into an early labor. Of Nathan, there was no sign. Bethany found herself watching the door whenever she was in the main rooms of the boarding house, hoping for a glimpse of his tall frame. Each day that passed without his appearance left her more dejected, though she chided herself for her foolishness. What claim did she have on a man she'd known for barely a day? On her third afternoon in Bisbee, as she was hanging laundry in the small yard behind the boarding house, Mrs. Martinez approached with an envelope in hand. "This came for you," she said, extending the letter. Bethany took it, puzzled. "For me? But no one knows I'm here." The envelope bore only her name in a bold, masculine script. With trembling fingers, she opened it to find a brief note. "Mrs. Green, business has taken me out of town unexpectedly. I've arranged with Mrs. Martinez for your board to be paid through the month. Please don't refuse. Consider it payment for the company you provided on an otherwise lonely journey. I hope to return to Bisbee soon and find you and your child well. Respectfully, Nathan Adler." Bethany read the note twice, emotions warring within her. Gratitude for his generosity, disappointment at his departure, and a strange, hollow feeling at the formality of his words. "He left yesterday morning," Mrs. Martinez said, watching Bethany's face carefully. "Paid in advance, as the note says." "I can't accept this," Bethany protested. "It's too much." The older woman shrugged. "The man was quite insistent, and if it eases your mind, you can continue working as we agreed. The payment simply gives you more time to find your footing in Bisbee." That evening, as Bethany sat in the parlor darning socks, she found herself wondering about Nathan Adler. What kind of man pays a month's board for a woman he barely knows, then disappears without a proper goodbye? Was it charity, guilt, or something else that motivated his generosity? The baby kicked vigorously as if sharing her agitation. "I know," she murmured, placing a hand on her belly. "I miss him too. Isn't that strange?" The days stretched into weeks. April gave way to May, bringing increasing heat to the Arizona territory. Bethany's pregnancy advanced, making her work at the boarding house more challenging. But Mrs. Martinez, whom she now called Alina, proved to be a compassionate employer despite her gruff exterior. "You remind me of my daughter," Alina admitted one evening as they prepared supper. She had the same spirit, never complained even when life was hard. "Where is she now?" Bethany asked, curious about the woman who had become something of a surrogate mother to her. A shadow crossed Alina's face. "She died in childbirth 10 years ago, the baby too." Bethany's hand instinctively went to her own swollen belly. "I'm so sorry." Alina nodded acknowledgement, then changed the subject. "I spoke with Mrs. Patterson at the Bisbee School Board yesterday. They may need a teacher come September. She seemed interested when I mentioned your experience." Hope blossomed in Bethany's chest. "That would be wonderful. By then, the baby will be a few months old, and I could perhaps find a girl to mind him or her while I teach." "You could stay here," Alina offered casually, not meeting Bethany's eyes. "The room is yours as long as you need it." Tears pricked at Bethany's eyes. "Thank you, Alina, for everything." As May turned to June, Bethany's thoughts often turned to Nathan. Had he truly intended to return to Bisbee, or had that been a polite fiction? The rational part of her knew she had no reason to expect anything from him. Yet she couldn't help scanning the streets for him whenever she ventured into town. June brought unbearable heat and the beginning of the summer monsoons. Violent thunderstorms would roll through the canyon, bringing brief, blessed relief from the heat before the sun returned with a vengeance. Bethany's pregnancy had reached its final month, her body unwieldy and uncomfortable in the relentless heat. On a particularly stifling afternoon, as Bethany rested in the relative cool of the parlor, a commotion outside drew her attention. Voices raised in alarm, the sound of running footsteps. Alina burst through the front door, her normally composed face etched with concern. "There's been another cave-in at the mine," she announced to the boarders who had gathered in the parlor. "A bad one." The news sent ripples of distress through the small group. Mine accidents were not uncommon in Bisbee, but a bad one meant significant casualties. Already they could hear the church bell tolling, summoning doctors and calling for volunteers. "I should go," said Mr. Hoffman, one of the minor boarders. "They'll need all the help they can get." "I'll come too," offered Mr. Jenkins, the mercantile owner. "My store has bandages and medicines." As the men hurried out, Bethany turned to Alina. "What can I do in your condition?" "Stay here and rest," Alina replied firmly. "I'll go to the church hall. They'll be bringing the injured there." But as the afternoon wore on, Bethany found she couldn't sit idle while the town mobilized around her. Despite Alina's instructions, she made her way to the church hall, where rows of injured miners were being tended by the town's limited medical personnel and volunteers. The scene was chaotic: blood-stained bandages, moans of pain, harried doctors moving from patient to patient. Bethany hesitated at the entrance, momentarily overwhelmed. "You there," called a harried-looking woman with a blood-splattered apron. "Can you fetch fresh water? The buckets are outside." Bethany nodded, grateful for a task she could manage despite her advanced pregnancy. For the next hour, she moved between the well and the church hall, carrying what water she could and helping to distribute it to the injured men and their caregivers. As she was filling a miner's cup, a familiar voice called her name. "Bethany, what in God's name are you doing here?" She turned to find Nathan standing in the doorway, his clothing covered in dust and grime, his face streaked with soot. Relief flooded through her at the sight of him, quickly followed by concern at his disheveled state. "Nathan," she breathed, "you're back." He crossed the room in long strides, his expression a mixture of disbelief and alarm. "You shouldn't be here in your condition. Where's Mrs. Martinez?" Helping the doctor. "Nathan, are you hurt?" Her eyes scanned him for injuries. "I'm fine. I was outside the mine when it happened, came straight here to help with the rescue." His gaze softened as he took in her swollen belly. "You look enormous," she supplied with a weak smile. "Beautiful," he corrected, the word escaping before he could stop it. A blush spread across Bethany's cheeks. Before she could respond, a pained cry from nearby drew their attention. One of the miners was thrashing in delirium, his leg badly mangled. "I need to help," Nathan said, reluctance clear in his voice. "But you should go back to the boarding house. This is no place for you right now." "I can help too," Bethany insisted. "I'm not an invalid." Nathan's expression turned stern. "Bethany, please, for your child's sake if not your own. Go home. I'll come find you when things are more settled here." The urgency in his voice convinced her. "Promise you'll come." His eyes held hers for a long moment. "I promise." With that assurance, Bethany made her way back to the boarding house. The exertion of the afternoon had taken its toll, and she found herself more exhausted than she wanted to admit. As she sank onto her bed, the baby shifted restlessly within her. "He came back," she whispered to her unborn child, "just as he said he would." It was well past midnight when Nathan finally arrived at the boarding house. Elena, who had returned an hour earlier, led him to the parlor where Bethany waited, unable to sleep despite her fatigue. He looked utterly spent, his tall frame seeming smaller somehow beneath the weight of the day's events. The grime had been washed from his face, but exhaustion was etched in every line. "How bad was it?" Bethany asked softly as he sank into the chair across from her. 12 dead. 20 more injured, some critically. His voice was hollow. One of the support beams gave way. They'd been warned it wasn't safe. Elena silently placed a glass of whiskey in front of him before retreating to the kitchen, giving them privacy. "I'm sorry," Bethany said, wishing there were words that could ease such tragedy. Nathan took a long swallow of the whiskey. "Mining towns," he said grimly. "The copper comes at a price." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day hanging between them. "I didn't think you were coming back," Bethany finally admitted. "To Bisbee, I mean." Nathan's eyes met hers. "I said I would. Men say many things." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He studied her for a moment. "You look well. The boarding house agrees with you." "Elena has been very kind, and your generosity gave me time to find my feet here." She hesitated. "I never properly thanked you for that." "No thanks needed." "Nevertheless, you have it." Bethany leaned forward slightly. "May I ask what brought you back to Bisbee? More courier work?" Nathan's gaze dropped to his glass. "Partly, and I wanted to make sure you were all right." The simple admission sent warmth spreading through Bethany's chest. "I am, thanks to you." His eyes lifted to meet hers again, something unspoken passing between them. Before either could break the silence, Bethany gasped, her hand flying to her belly. "What is it?" Nathan asked, instantly alert. "The baby." "Just a strong kick," Bethany assured him, though the sensation had been more painful than usual. "He or she is quite active tonight." Nathan relaxed slightly, though concern still lingered in his eyes. "You should rest. It's late." "Will you be in town long?" The question escaped before she could consider its implications. He hesitated. "A few days at least. I have business to conclude." "I'm glad," Bethany said simply. Nathan stood, his tall frame casting a long shadow in the lamplight. "Good night, Bethany." "Good night, Nathan." As he turned to leave, another sharp pain lanced through Bethany's abdomen, this one undeniable in its meaning. She gasped, clutching the arm of her chair. Nathan was at her side instantly. "That wasn't a kick, was it?" Bethany shook her head, fear and excitement warring within her. I think the baby is coming." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. Elena, roused by Nathan's urgent call, took charge with the confidence of experience. She helped Bethany to her room and sent Nathan for the midwife, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Winters, who arrived with surprising speed given the late hour. "First babies often take their time," the midwife assured Bethany as she examined her. "Could be hours yet." But Bethany's baby, it seemed, was as impatient as its mother. By dawn, her labor had progressed rapidly, the pains coming with increasing frequency and intensity. Nathan paced the hallway outside her room, his face drawn with concern each time Bethany's cries reached him. Elena emerged occasionally with updates, her expression giving away little. "Is there nothing I can do?" he asked after a particularly agonizing scream from within. Elena studied him with shrewd eyes. "You care for her." It wasn't a question, but Nathan answered anyway. "Yes." "Then pray," the older woman said simply before returning to Bethany's side. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Bethany's ordeal reached its peak. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced, tearing through her body in relentless waves. Just when she thought she could endure no more, Mrs. Winters's voice cut through the fog of agony. "One more push, Mrs. Green. I can see the head." With the last of her strength, Bethany bore down, a primal scream escaping her lips. And then, miraculously, relief followed by the thin, indignant wail of a newborn. "A boy," Mrs. Winters announced, placing the squalling infant on Bethany's chest. "A healthy son." Tears streamed down Bethany's face as she gazed at her child, red-faced, squinting, and perfect in every way. "Hello, Thomas," she whispered, naming him for his father as custom dictated, though the name felt strange on her lips, after cleaning mother and child and ensuring both were stable. Mrs. Winters departed with instructions for Bethany to rest. Alina helped her change into a fresh nightgown and settled her back against the pillows, the baby swaddled beside her. "He's beautiful," Alina said, her voice thick with emotion. "Strong lungs, too." "Thank you for everything," Bethany murmured, exhaustion beginning to claim her. Alina patted her hand. "There's someone outside who's been worried sick about you. Would you like to see him?" Bethany's heart quickened despite her fatigue. "Yes, please." A moment later, Nathan entered the room, his hat in his hands and uncertainty written across his features. When his eyes fell on the tiny bundle beside Bethany, something shifted in his expression, a softening, a wonder. "You have a son," Bethany said softly. Nathan approached the bed slowly, as if afraid to intrude. "He's perfect, like his mother." The compliment brought fresh tears to Bethany's eyes. "Would you like to hold him?" Surprise flickered across Nathan's face, followed by trepidation. "I don't know if I should." "Please," Bethany insisted. "You saved both our lives. It seems only right." With gentle hands that belied his strength, Nathan lifted the swaddled infant. The baby squirmed slightly before settling against his broad chest, one tiny hand escaping the blanket to grasp at air. "Hello there, little man," Nathan murmured, his voice gentle in a way Bethany had never heard before. "You gave us quite a scare." The sight of the rugged cowboy cradling her newborn son with such tenderness broke something open in Bethany's heart. In that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that she was falling in love with Nathan Adler. The realization should have frightened her, but instead it felt like coming home after a long journey. "His name is Thomas," she said, "after his father." Something flashed in Nathan's eyes, disappointment, perhaps, but he quickly masked it. A fine name for a fine boy. He carefully returned the baby to Bethany's arms. "You should rest now. You've been through an ordeal. Will you stay?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "In Bisbee, I mean." Nathan hesitated, conflict evident in his expression. "I have commitments elsewhere, but I'll stay until you're on your feet again." It wasn't the answer she had hoped for, but it was enough for now. Bethany nodded, fighting to keep her eyes open as exhaustion pulled at her. "Rest," Nathan said softly. "I'll be here when you wake." The next few days passed in a haze of joy and fatigue as Bethany adjusted to motherhood. Little Thomas proved to be a good-natured baby, crying only when hungry or wet. Alina was a godsend, showing Bethany how to nurse properly and taking the baby for short periods so the new mother could rest. And Nathan. Nathan was a constant presence, though he kept a respectful distance. He took meals at the boarding house and often sat with Bethany in the parlor in the evenings, telling her stories of his travels across the territories to distract her from her discomfort as her body healed. 5 days after Thomas's birth, as they sat in the parlor while the baby slept in a makeshift cradle nearby, Bethany finally asked the question that had been on her mind since his return. "What really brought you back to Bisbee, Nathan?" He looked up from the piece of leather he was mending, his expression guarded. "I told you, courier work." "Is that all?" Nathan set aside his work, his gray eyes meeting hers directly. "No," he admitted finally. "That's not all." Bethany waited, her heart beating a rapid tattoo against her ribs. "I couldn't stop thinking about you," he said, the words coming slowly as if each one cost him effort. "About how you were facing everything alone. I told myself I was just checking on you, making sure you were settling in all right. And were you? Just checking?" A rueful smile touched his lips. "I think we both know better than that." Hope blossomed in Bethany's chest. "Then why are you so determined to leave again?" Nathan sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "Bethany, I'm not. I don't have anything to offer a woman like you. I'm a drifter. No home, no steady work. Just me and Rusty and the open trail." "Perhaps that's enough," she suggested softly. He shook his head. "You deserve better. You and Thomas both." Before Bethany could argue further, Thomas began to fuss in his cradle. She rose to tend to him, lifting the tiny boy against her shoulder. "He needs changing," she said, a slight grimace on her face. "Would you excuse me?" Nathan nodded, watching as she carried the baby upstairs. When she returned sometime later, having fed and changed Thomas and laid him down for a nap, she found the parlor empty. A note lay on her chair: "Had to see a man about a job. Back for supper." Disappointment washed over her. It seemed their conversation would have to wait. That evening Nathan did return as promised, but he wasn't alone. With him was a distinguished-looking gentleman in a well-cut suit, whom he introduced as Mr. Lawrence, the superintendent of the Copper Queen mine. "Mr. Lawrence has a proposition for you," Nathan explained as they settled in the parlor after supper. The mine superintendent cleared his throat. "Mrs. Green, Mr. Adler tells me you were a teacher back east." "Yes, sir," Bethany confirmed, puzzled by this turn of events. "For 5 years in Boston. Well, as it happens, Bisbee is in desperate need of a teacher. Mrs. Patterson, who runs our school board, is looking to expand the school now that the town is growing. We have nearly 40 children of school age and only one overworked teacher." Hope sparked in Bethany's chest. "I would be very interested in such a position, Mr. Lawrence." The man nodded approvingly. "Good, good. The pay isn't what you might have earned in Boston, but it's a living wage. And there's a small house that goes with the position, nothing fancy, but it would provide you and your son with a home of your own." Bethany could hardly believe what she was hearing. A teaching position and a home all in one day. She glanced at Nathan, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. This is wonderful news, Mr. Lawrence. May I ask when the position would begin?" "September, when the new term starts. That gives you a couple of months to settle in and prepare." He rose to his feet. "Mrs. Patterson would like to meet with you tomorrow if that's convenient. Just a formality, I assure you. Mr. Adler has spoken very highly of your qualifications." After Mr. Lawrence departed, Bethany turned to Nathan, her eyes shining with gratitude and something more. "You did this," he shrugged, a faint color touching his cheekbones. "I just made the introduction. Your qualifications did the rest. Nathan." She moved to sit beside him on the sofa. "Thank you." His eyes met hers, and for a moment the barrier he maintained between them seemed to falter. "I wanted to make sure you and Thomas would be all right, even if you leave," she finished for him. He nodded, unable to deny it. Bethany took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "What if I asked you to stay?" Nathan's expression grew pained. "Bethany, I told you. I know what you told me," she interrupted gently. "That you have nothing to offer. But that's not true, Nathan. You've offered me kindness when I needed it most. You've offered Thomas a chance at a stable life. You've offered me hope." She reached out, tentatively placing her hand over his. "I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for a chance." For a long moment, Nathan stared at their joined hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I'm not Thomas's father." "No, you're not," she agreed. "His father is dead, but Thomas needs someone in his life who cares for him, and I—" She hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I need someone who cares for me." Nathan's eyes lifted to meet hers, vulnerability clear in their depths. "I more than care for you, Bethany. That's what scares me." The confession, spoken so plainly, sent a shiver of joy through her. "Then why run from it?" "Because I've lost everyone I ever loved," he admitted, the words seeming to tear from him. "My parents, my brother in the war, a woman I once thought to marry. I swore I'd never put myself in that position again." Understanding dawned. "So you chose the life of a drifter." "Always moving, never connecting," he nodded. "It was easier that way. And now," he sighed, his thumb absently stroking the back of her hand. "Now I find myself wondering what it might be like to stay in one place, to watch Thomas grow too, to be with you." Hope surged in Bethany's chest. "You could find out." Nathan's gaze held hers, the conflict within him evident. "I don't know if I remember how to live any other way." "Then we'll learn together," she suggested softly, "day by day." A long moment passed between them, filled with unspoken possibility. Finally, Nathan nodded, a decision seeming to settle over him. "There's a small ranch for sale outside of town," he said. "Nothing grand, a cabin, a barn, some decent grazing land. I looked at it yesterday." Surprise and joy mingled in Bethany's expression. "You did?" "I've been saving most of what I earn," he explained. "Never had much to spend it on, living on the trail. Thought maybe it was time to put down some roots." Tears welled in Bethany's eyes. "Oh, Nathan." "I'm not saying it would be easy," he cautioned. "I'd still need to find work, might have to be away sometimes on courier runs, and I don't know the first thing about being a father figure to Thomas. But you want to try." The question hung between them, weighted with hope and fear and possibility. "Yes," Nathan finally said, the word both a confession and a promise. "God help me, I want to try." Bethany's heart soared. Impulsively, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a gentle, questioning kiss. Nathan froze for an instant before responding, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek with exquisite tenderness. When they parted, both were breathing a little faster, wonder reflected in their eyes. "I should warn you," Bethany murmured. "I'm rather stubborn once I set my mind to something." A slow smile spread across Nathan's face, transforming his features. "I noticed that when you insisted on helping at the church hall despite being 9 months pregnant," she laughed softly. "And I should warn you that Thomas will likely be just as headstrong. Like his mother then." Nathan's expression grew serious. "Bethany, I can't promise I'll be perfect at this. I might make a mess of things sometimes." "I don't need perfect," she assured him. "I just need you to be here, to try." He nodded, his thumb gently tracing the curve of her cheek. "That I can promise." From upstairs came the faint sound of Thomas beginning to fuss. Bethany sighed, reluctant to break the moment. "Go," Nathan said. "He needs you." As she stood, Bethany held out her hand. "Come with me." A brief hesitation, then Nathan took her hand and rose. Together, they climbed the stairs to where Thomas lay in his cradle, his tiny face scrunched in displeasure. Bethany lifted him, murmuring soothing words as she settled him against her shoulder. The baby's cries quieted almost immediately. "He knows his mother's touch," Nathan observed, watching them with undisguised wonder. "Would you like to hold him?" Bethany offered. Nathan nodded, accepting the tiny bundle with more confidence than he'd shown the first time. Thomas blinked up at him, tiny fingers grasping at air. "Hello again, little man," Nathan murmured. "Seems I might be sticking around for a while." Bethany watched them, her heart so full it felt it might burst. From the most desperate circumstances had come the greatest blessing she could imagine, not just a safe haven for her and her son, but the promise of a family. built on choice rather than obligation. The months that followed were a time of adjustment and discovery. Nathan purchased the small ranch he'd mentioned, spending every spare moment repairing the cabin and preparing it for Bethany and Thomas. Meanwhile, Bethany met with Mrs. Patterson and officially accepted the teaching position at Bisbee School, set to begin in September. In July, with Thomas almost a month old, Nathan approached Bethany as she sat on the boarding house porch, enjoying the relative cool of the evening. "I'd like you and Thomas to come see the ranch tomorrow," he said, an unusual nervousness in his manner. "If you're feeling up to it." "I'd like that very much," Bethany replied, curious about his demeanor. "Elena has been telling me I should get out more." The following morning, Nathan arrived with a rented buggy, carefully helping Bethany and Thomas into it. The baby, snug in a basket padded with blankets, slept contentedly as they set out from town. "It's about 3 miles outside Bisbee," Nathan explained as he guided the horse along the dusty road. "Far enough for peace and quiet, close enough for you to reach the school easily." The terrain gradually changed from the rocky slopes surrounding Bisbee to more open country. Finally, Nathan turned the buggy onto a narrow track that led to a small valley nestled between gentle hills. "There it is," he said as they crested a rise. Below them lay a modest cabin with a wide porch, a well-built barn, and a corral where Rusty grazed contentedly. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwood trees that provided welcome shade. It wasn't grand by any measure, but to Bethany, it looked like paradise. "Oh, Nathan," she breathed. "It's lovely." Pride was evident in his face as he guided the buggy down to the cabin. "It needs work still. The roof leaks in one corner and the chimney needs repointing before winter, but the foundations are solid." He helped her down from the buggy, then carefully lifted Thomas's basket. Together they approached the cabin. "I should warn you," Nathan said as they reached the porch. "It's pretty bare inside. I haven't had much time for furnishing." But when he opened the door, Bethany gasped in surprise. The main room was simply but comfortably furnished with a sturdy table and chairs, a rocking chair by the fireplace, and bookshelves already containing a few volumes. A curtained doorway led to what she presumed was a bedroom. "Nathan, this is. When did you do all this?" He looked almost embarrassed. "I've been working on it evenings after visiting you and Thomas. Elena helped with the curtains, and Mr. Jenkins at the Mercantile gave me a good price on the furniture." Tears welled in Bethany's eyes as she took in the care he had put into making the cabin a home. "It's perfect." Nathan set Thomas's basket on the table, the baby still sleeping soundly. "There's something else I want to show you." He led her through the curtained doorway into a bedroom containing a double bed with a handmade quilt. But what drew Bethany's attention was a smaller piece of furniture in the corner, a beautifully crafted wooden cradle. "I made it for Thomas," Nathan said quietly. "Mrs. Martinez said he'll outgrow the basket soon." Bethany ran her hand over the smooth wood, noting the careful details, the gently curved hood, the rockers that would soothe a fussy baby. "It's beautiful." "There's a smaller bedroom through there," Nathan continued, gesturing to another doorway. "Thought it could be Thomas's when he's older, or—" he hesitated, color rising in his cheeks, "or for any other children that might come along." The implication hung in the air between them. Bethany turned to face him, her heart pounding. "Nathan Adler, are you asking me something?" He took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I've been carrying this around for a week, waiting for the right moment." From the pouch, he produced a simple gold band set with a small, perfect sapphire. "It was my mother's," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. "The only thing of hers I kept." Bethany's breath caught as Nathan took her hand in his. "I know it's fast," he said. I know we're still learning about each other, but I love you, Bethany Green. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you never gave up, even when the odds were against you. I love Thomas as if he were my own, and if you'll have me, I want to spend my life with both of you." Tears spilled down Bethany's cheeks as joy surged through her. "Are you asking me to marry you, Nathan?" A smile broke across his face. "I reckon I am, though I'm making a hash of it." "You're doing just fine," she assured him, stepping closer. "And yes, yes, I will marry you." With hands that trembled slightly, Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "I love you," Bethany whispered as his arms encircled her. "I think I have since that first night by your campfire." Nathan's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of all they would share in the years to come. When they finally parted, both were breathless. From the other room came the familiar sounds of Thomas waking. Bethany laughed softly. "Perfect timing, as usual." "I'll get him," Nathan offered, his eyes still holding hers. "That's what fathers do, isn't it?" The word father sent warmth spreading through Bethany's chest. "Yes," she agreed. "That's exactly what they do." They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the Bisbee Church, with Alina Martinez standing as Bethany's witness and Mr. Lawrence representing Nathan. Thomas, cradled in Alina's arms during the service, remained blissfully asleep as his mother and the man who would raise him as his own exchanged vows. Bethany wore a new blue dress that matched her engagement ring, and Nathan cut a handsome figure in a suit borrowed from Mr. Lawrence. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan's kiss was both tender and possessive, bringing a blush to Bethany's cheeks and approving murmurs from the small gathering of well-wishers. That evening, after they had settled Thomas in his new cradle at the ranch, Nathan and Bethany stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of gold and purple. "Happy, Mrs. Adler?" Nathan asked, his arm around her waist. The name, her new name, sent a thrill through Bethany. "More than I ever thought possible." As darkness fell, they retired to their bedroom, both nervous yet eager to begin their life together in every sense. Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he helped Bethany with the buttons of her dress, and her breath caught at the first touch of his calloused fingers against her bare skin. "I've never wanted anyone the way I want you," he confessed, his voice rough with desire. "Then show me," Bethany whispered, drawing him down to her. Their lovemaking was tender at first, then increasingly passionate as they discovered each other's bodies. For Bethany, who had known only duty with her first husband, the pleasure Nathan brought her was a revelation. When they finally lay entwined in the aftermath, both breathing heavily, she felt as though she had discovered a part of herself long dormant. "I never knew it could be like that," she murmured against his chest. Nathan's arms tightened around her. "For me either," he admitted. "Because I never loved anyone the way I love you." As summer gave way to fall, they settled into a rhythm of life on the small ranch. Nathan found work as the sheriff's deputy in Bisbee, a position that kept him close to home while utilizing his tracking skills and knowledge of the territory. Bethany began teaching at the Bisbee school, bringing Thomas with her in a basket that sat beside her desk. The little boy thrived, growing stronger each day. His eyes, which had been the indeterminate blue of most newborns, gradually darkened to a warm brown that reminded Bethany of her father. His disposition remained sunny, his smiles freely given especially to Nathan, whom he clearly adored. For his part, Nathan took to fatherhood with surprising ease. He spent hours with Thomas, talking to him as if the baby understood every word, carrying him around the ranch to show him the ropes, as he put it. "He's going to be a cowboy, this one," Nathan declared one evening as Thomas gripped his finger with surprising strength. Or perhaps a teacher like his mother, Bethany countered with a smile. Nathan grinned. Maybe both. He's an Adler now, he can be whatever he wants. The casual statement brought tears to Bethany's eyes. Yes, she agreed softly, he is an Adler. As winter approached, bringing cooler temperatures to the Arizona territory, Bethany discovered she was pregnant again. The news filled her with both joy and trepidation: joy at expanding their family, fear at the memory of Thomas's difficult birth. "We'll get the best doctor in the territory," Nathan promised when she confided her concerns. "And Alina will help. You won't be alone this time." The reassurance eased her mind, and as her pregnancy progressed, Bethany found herself enjoying the experience far more than she had with Thomas. There was no shame this time, no need to hide her condition or face disapproving stares. Instead, there was only Nathan's tender care and the community's support. Spring arrived, painting the desert with wildflowers and bringing new life to the ranch. Nathan had acquired a few cattle and was gradually building a small herd, with dreams of eventually making the ranch their primary income rather than supplementing it with his deputy work. Thomas, now 10 months old, was crawling everywhere and pulling himself up on furniture, babbling constantly in his own language. His first word, "Dada," had brought tears to Nathan's eyes, though he tried to hide them. "He knows who his father is," Bethany had said softly, watching the two of them together. In May of 1884, just as the desert was beginning to heat up again, Bethany went into labor. Unlike Thomas's birth, this one progressed slowly, giving Nathan plenty of time to fetch both Alina and Dr. Richards, the physician who had moved to Bisbee the previous autumn. After 12 hours of labor, much of it spent with Nathan by her side holding her hand, Bethany delivered a healthy baby girl. They named her Elizabeth Alina Adler, honoring both Bethany's mother and the woman who had become like family to them. "She has your eyes," Nathan whispered as he held his daughter for the first time, wonder evident in his face. "Gray, like storm clouds." "And your stubborn chin," Bethany countered with a tired smile. Thomas, brought in by Alina to meet his sister, regarded the tiny bundle with solemn curiosity before breaking into a wide grin. "Baby," he announced proudly, one of the few words in his growing vocabulary. "That's right, son," Nathan said, including the boy in the moment. "Your baby sister." As Bethany watched her family, her husband, her son, her newborn daughter, a profound sense of gratitude washed over her. From the darkest moment of her life, alone and pregnant on the trail, had come this abundance of joy. "Penny for your thoughts," Nathan murmured, noticing her expression. "I was just thinking about that day you found me," Bethany replied. "How close I came to never knowing this happiness." Nathan's eyes grew serious. "I thank God every day that I decided to camp where I did that night." "As do I," Bethany agreed, reaching for his hand. "As do I." The years that followed brought both joys and challenges to the Adler family. The ranch gradually prospered under Nathan's careful management, allowing him to eventually resign his deputy position and focus solely on their growing herd. Bethany continued teaching until the birth of their third child, a boy they named James, in 1886, after which she devoted herself to raising their children and managing their increasingly comfortable home. Thomas, growing into a thoughtful, intelligent boy with his mother's academic inclinations and his adoptive father's love of the outdoors, never questioned his place in the family. When he was 8 years old, Nathan and Bethany sat him down and gently explained the circumstances of his birth. "Your father was a good man," Bethany told him, choosing her words carefully. "But he died before you were born. Then I met Nathan, who loved both of us from the very beginning." "So you're not my real father," Thomas asked Nathan, confusion evident in his young face. Nathan knelt beside the boy, placing his hands on Thomas's shoulders. I may not be the man who gave you life, son, but I am your father in every way that matters. I've loved you since the day you were born, and nothing will ever change that. Thomas considered this solemnly before nodding. I'm glad you found us, Pa. The simple acceptance brought tears to both parents' eyes. As Bisbee grew from a rough mining town into a more established community, the Adlers became respected fixtures in local society. Nathan served on the town council, helping to guide Bisbee's development with a focus on safety regulations for the mines that had been lacking in the early days. Bethany, though no longer teaching full-time, remained involved with the school, organizing a library and occasionally substituting when needed. Elena Martinez remained a beloved figure in their lives, a grandmother to their children in all but blood. When she finally retired from running the boarding house in 1890, she accepted the Adlers' invitation to live with them, moving into a comfortable room they added to the ranch house specifically for her. You gave me a family when I thought I had lost everything, she told Bethany one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. How could I refuse? The small cabin had long since been expanded into a comfortable ranch house with ample room for their growing family. The herd had increased to over 200 head of cattle, making the Adler Ranch one of the more successful operations in the area. Nathan had even hired 2 full-time hands to help with the work. On the evening of their 10th wedding anniversary, after the children were asleep and Elena had retired to her room, Nathan led Bethany out to the porch, where they had shared so many moments over the years. I have something for you, he said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Bethany unwrapped it to find a leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. It's beautiful, Nathan. Open it, he urged. Inside, on the first page, Nathan had written in his distinctive bold hand, "For Bethany, who taught me that home isn't a place but a person. 10 years ago you asked me to stay. Every day since has been a blessing beyond what I deserve. I love you more today than I did then, and I'll love you more tomorrow than I do today. All my heart always, Nathan." Tears filled Bethany's eyes as she read the inscription. Oh, Nathan. He took her hands in his expression earnest in the lamplight spilling from the window. When I found you on that trail, I was running from life. You taught me how to live again, Bethany. You and our children, you're everything to me. Bethany leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss filled with the depth of feeling that had grown between them over a decade of shared joys and sorrows. You ever regret it? She asked when they parted. Settling down, giving up the freedom of the trail. Nathan shook his head, his gray eyes reflecting the starlight. Not for a single moment. The truth is, I was never free on the trail, I was just lost. As they stood together in the cool desert night, arms around each other and hearts beating in sync, Bethany reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, from a desperate young widow alone in the wilderness to a woman surrounded by love and family. Found, she whispered, completing his thought. We both were. And as Nathan's arms tightened around her, Bethany knew with absolute certainty that the fire he had shared with her that fateful night had kindled something far more enduring than either of them could have imagined, a love that would warm them for all the days of their lives.